Sagarataran Karana he, Ravi Nandana Bandana Kandana he, Sharanagata Kinkara Beta Mane, Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane. Riddhi Kandara Tamasa Bhashkara he, Tumi Vishnu Prajapati Shankara he, Para Brahma Parat Para Veda Bane, Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane. Manabharana Shashana Ankusha he, Naratrana Tare Hari Chakshusha he, Gunagana Parayana Deva Gane, Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane. Kula Kundalini Guma Banjaka he, Riddhi Granti Vidarana Karaka he, Mama Manasha Chanchala Ratra Dine, Guru Deva Daya Karadina Jane.
The powerful spiritual force at the base of the spine awakens at thy touch, and the bondage of desire disappears when you grant detachment and discrimination. But my mind remains restless despite these supreme blessings. O Teacher Divine, kindly shower compassion upon thy humble devotee.
Namaste and aloha from Hawaii. We are now about to embark on some more inward ascension of the 7 chakras of the Kundalini Yoga system, and do so at the second half of the 5th and final class, originally to be a 4-class series, which we will soon have edited and on YouTube for people to look at. But also, in the meantime, finish up this 5th class, which is a sort of surprise addition to all of us, coming at this time of the virus and the problems it's causing in people's thinking and worlds. We think that all of this information, would rather think of it as Dharma teachings that have a huge solution for all problems behind them. But of course they have to be entertained, as we like to say, in the mind, and for that you're going to have to spend a little time just sitting. Just meditation is good, sitting daily, but contemplation is probably not taught or enjoined. That's the manana of the Shravana. That is, you hear it and then you go somewhere and think about it. But if you just hear it and then go right into meditation, then your mind doesn't have a chance to purify itself of notions that may impede your meditation. So the art of contemplation, rumination, is different than meditation in our tradition. Yukti, sometimes it's called. Shruti to hear, yukti to analyze and reason about, and then anubhava, get the direct experience from it. So I'm reiterating that because it's been a theme that we've repeated before in classes and in class series, so that to encourage people to go somewhere and just try it. Just try sitting with your mind after hearing some profound teachings. Keep a few things from the teaching that you really liked that grabbed you, because some things aren't going to be applicable to all people at all times. Maybe some people don't need that teaching repeated, they've got it already. Other people have never heard it, and so it surprises them and they're going to forget it right away. Some people will have a teaching come to them and it'll really strike them. And those are the ones you hold on to, and then you go and you sit down like I'm doing right now, and you just think about it in your mind. It's savichara samadhi you can get out of that. It's discursive thinking, the Buddhists call it. And it's got a place in everything. As you will see from the next chart that we're coming up upon, there are many states of consciousness that the soul will pass through That is, the soul means the mind here, because the Atman soul, that's already pure and perfect, as we like to repeat. But the mind is the transmigrating soul, fourfold transmigrating soul. Beautiful teaching that makes that discriminating distinction between what is real and what is not real, or what is changeless and what is changing. Mutability and immutability. Activity and transcendence. There are so many ways in which you can meditate on those things. Those aren't even really very powerful teachings, they're just dualities. But what they call up in your mind can be very powerful, just to make the distinction. A nice word for that in English is discernment. Sometimes we use vairagya or detachment, but detachment, people go, oh, do I really have to? But discernment is really kind of easier. Just with your mind you discern the reality or non-reality of a thing. And so this is my second half early preamble, which I will make a lot shorter for you, because we want to go on to the quotes from the tradition that I've put here in these little boxes on this chart that you're looking at. Because we talked about already nadis, pranashaktis. You heard teachings about granthis, and we've also looked at the chakras. These are Kundalini words that open you up to a new vista of your own consciousness, which thousands of people have entertained in their minds over thousands of years. And it might seem esoteric to you today, and that's why I wrote that little book, Reclaiming Kundalini Yoga. If you want to write to us and get a copy of that sent to you, I think the mailman's still delivering. Some things are still happening out there in our virus-impeded world, but you can get teachings on this system that help explain it very concretely and very clearly, so that poisons like unclarity will not rise up in you whenever you try and follow a pathway. You get thrown back, one step forward, two steps back, Father of Yoga says. Or Bhranti Darshana. Get deluded about a certain way of thinking instead of being clarified. This is no good. Go into a system and get further deluded. No, you want clarification. And so that poison and that nectar side by side would be easily dealt with a little hearing the truth and contemplating the truth, spending some time in spiritual life, investing in your own spiritual credit and merit and growth, and finding out the teachings there by words like that: nadis, granthis, chakras, pranashaktis. These are these forces inside of you. There's lots of things inside your body right now that are doing things for you. Those are pranashaktis. But pranika is different. See, that's the psychic power. There's a psychic shakti in you. So, you know, that is helping move your thoughts. And in the realm of thought, which is much vaster than this world, dreaming, deep sleep, envisioning, superimposing, creating. There are so many things that are taking place in these worlds that is not just the physical world, like these two, the second and third chakras, that are under the behest of beings that are occupying subtle bodies that we can't see. The pranashaktis are weaving in and throughout all of those beings, and if they know how to take advantage of those powers, it would be just like you having a disease of the body and then finding out from some healer that there's something you can take. You see, oh, guess what? You have some problem there with your systems, you see. And here, there's this thing you can take out of nature, and that'll help that, you see. So it's the same if you have some impedance in your subtle body. And your thinking is your subtle body, basically. And that goes deep inward, not just thinking about worldly things, but thinking about deep philosophies and great teachings like this that are inspiring. So the pranashaktis would come along and said, oh, here, take me. You see, I'm a certain medicine for what you're suffering there, but you're not taking me, you see. Here I am floating around in your chakra waiting to heal you, but you're not grabbing onto me and and actually taking me into the equation. So how else to say, as in heaven on earth is one thing that occurs to me. What happens, God's will in heaven, it's also on earth. So let's reverse that. It happens on earth, but it also happens in heaven, in these deeper chakras. So I've got a little preamble going on there too for the second half of second one. But I'm just saying this in context of the prana shaktis. We've looked at those, so I'm not going to say a lot more about them. Just think of them as evolutes of the Divine Mother. If Maya has evolutes, 16 of them to be specific in the tradition, Divine Mother Kundalini also has evolutes or emanations coming off her. And they're present. I was saying about the poisons and nectars at the break just now. It's a short list. There are lots of other things that can happen in these worlds. And you know, because there's lots that's happening to you here in this world, different every day, good and bad and mixed. So it's no difference in the realm of the mind as you go into contemplation and meditation or leave the body at the time of so-called death. You want to have your powers, your yogic powers. And the first thing the Raja yogis will tell you is get your prana under control. Because if, at least Vedantically speaking, if you start from there, you're not going to have to worry about detaching the senses from their objects. That teaching falls to a lower grade of aspirant. Oh shoot, I've got attachment here, I've got to break that attachment from this sense, from that object. And hopefully I'll be successful at that. But if you've got your prana under control, everything would fall. So the prana shaktis would fall, I should finish that sentence, would fall into balance. And so if you're aware of the prana shaktis and pranika coming up here, that'll help you. So in these next, as we ascend again, you're coming back out of the seventh chakra, back to the first, ascending again, descending, ascending. It's almost like the way we do it in meditation. So we had to repeat what we just said. The chakras are vortexes of vital consciousness force called prana shakti, and each chakra possesses a host of forces that work on its own specific plane. Now let's go up to the anahata at the heart there, where Isha is presiding, and air is the element. That's a whole different level of teaching and considering and contemplating. This is the air of heights. I remember beautiful poems in China and so forth that I learned. Oh, blessed air of heights, where you're looking out from this mountain trail on this beautiful vista. And you know, like the poem that we just read from our founder, Lex Hickson, when your breath ceases in delight, it catches. See, that's like kumbhaka, it's called. There's a word for that. And kumbhaka is, of course, one of the phases of your breathing. It's also a samadhi. So when you see something that's very profound that you've been trying to see for a long time, like the quote I started off with in class today, Te Jnana Yoga Nugata Pasyan, the seers finally saw the Devatma Shaktim, Kundalini, in everything, existing everywhere at all times. And it was veiled by nature, the gunas specifically, but even though she was veiled, she was the same behind the veil. She lowered it and raised it, just like a woman at a masquerade party. So these are all ways of saying then that these prana shaktis will help you remove these impediments if you take them and introduce yourself to them. They're like guardians at the gate. They're like minor deities, and they're like daughters of the mother. And here at the Isha air level, it says, the nadis are subtle nerve currents along which flow the psychic current, parens, pranika. So now there's a word for psychic prana. And there's also a word for nadis. Nadis are not physical nerves, but yoga nadis that cannot be detected by the eye. Those two bits of information, I believe, are from the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad mentioned there. So now we can use these words. Nadis, you mean nerve endings? No, we need yoga nadis that can't be detected by the eye. Or they come and they ask you, well, what about prana? Is that only in our body? Or in our senses? Or in flowing water? Or in moving wind? No, it's prana shakti we're referring to here. They're pranika. It's a psychic power that moves your thoughts through heaven, through the inner worlds. There's a force too, and you should get a hold of it and direct it, because then you can move through all the realms, all the kingdoms of heaven within you. You can go to all the rooms of your Father's palace. And you should be able to do that as an accomplished practitioner, what to speak of an adept that can stop all movement. When your breath seizes in delight, well, how about when I reach a higher level and I seize it myself? I'm not just going to be the recipient of some grace from some God or something where I get this experience that only lasts a few minutes or a day. I want to do it for all time now. I want to open this eye forever and keep it open. So this is what they mean by getting the prana under your control. It's not just a physical force where if I get it under control, my digestion is better, or my breathing opens up, or my arm can move again, because it was once atrophied, you see. No, it's just everything inside your subtle body can move too, at your own behest, by your own will. And of course you're going to say, by the mother's will, because that prana shakti was connected to her and you saw that. So those two bits of teaching in the Kundalini system, I put them right there after the Anahata Chakra and before the Vishuddha Chakra. There's two more. One teaching is there above the Vishuddha, which is the throat chakra. The deities are forms of universal consciousness which manifest in the chakras. A good way to look at gods and goddesses rather than just pictures on a poster that you believe in or don't believe in. There are actually beings involved in a kind of loka sangraha of their own. They're operating all the inner forces. The psychic pranas are probably looking at them going, there's where you want to go. Follow me. And grab onto her hem of her garment, her sari, because she's heading. And if you don't grab onto it, then we're very sorry for you. So you must move inward with Ma Kundalini. And this is then part about getting to the wisdom eye. That's next. The Agya Chakra, where Shambhu, Lord Shiva, symbolically represented by the forehead, or the point between the brows, as Sri Ramakrishna would say, has this teaching. The Sahasrara is not a chakra, but an infinite realm where all rests in a causal state. What else could you say in English but that? It's all resting in its own potential to manifest again, hopefully with full consciousness. Should a man be reborn again? They asked Swami Vivekananda when he talked about systems like this in 1893 and early 1900 when he was here. He said, I dearly hope he will not be born again, not until he can do so in full consciousness. So this would be a bodhisattva, a jivan mukta, a nityasiddha, an ishvara koti, a vibhuti even. There are different grades of beings. We'll look at that next, that occupy these chakras and which you want to make your fast friend. You need friends in high places. And no better way and place for that to apply to than in these chakras. Make acquaintance with the sentient and the insentient, isn't it? The unreal never exists. The real never ceases to be. The truth about both has been known by the seers. Why did they want to know the truth about the unreal? because those unreal things were where Kundalini Shakti was passing through. She birthed them, the worlds, the 5 elements. You don't want to know about them? You sound like a earthbound soul to me. Let's just fish the rivers out, burn the forest down, piss off the Jains, see? Kill animals, sell their fur, pluck feathers out of birds for plumage. That sounds like the kind of being you are. Go to war when anything stops you from doing those things, in all of your arrogance. So this is coming from an entirely different trajectory of realized souls who have realized what? That all of this lies under the behest of a great power. And you're going to have to awaken your own prana, get a hold of the prana shaktis, control the pranika, and with that open up the nadis leading to the chakras, and then have Kundalini Ma take you to the highest center of awareness. If you want to put it very quickly using a combination of English and Sanskrit in one sentence. So this chart can be looked back and reviewed. We will try and make this available to you soon, all 5 of these classes in a YouTube version, so you'll be able to look back on these with the most ease possible and hopefully do that. Now that you've heard it, do that manana, or that yukti, that reasoning process about it, and get a witness conscious developed around it, and connect it to your own inherent wisdom. All souls know all of this, but not all the time. They pass into lower worlds with inferior mechanisms and upbringing and societies and many impediments, what to speak of poisons inside, poisons outside too, that we're all dealing with, even right on down to the germ and the virus. And a lot of things there to keep you or put you off of your spiritual practice, which needs to be an ongoing thing from lifetime to lifetime in order to transcend these lower 3 chakras and get to the heart. Get to the heart of the matter. It's a nice saying for Kundalini Shakti. Since we've explained prana shaktis, we've explained letters and sounds as bijams, then you can probably make this a matter of a simple lesson for yourself, and just count on the truth of it coming from the seers, that the lowest Muladhara chakra has 4 sounds, 4 letters, and 4 prana shaktis. And the next has 6 of each. The next has 10 of each. And the heart chakra has 12 of each. So the only thing I didn't include in this chart, because I don't think it's all that important, are the colors. Because again, New Age people looking at the Kundalini system have kind of gotten focused on color healing and crystals and things like that, that take you away from the main point of the practice and what you should be doing with it, in much the same way the Hatha yogis have been focusing just on the body and not on the subtle body and on this prana and raising it. So there you see 16 of each in the Vishuddha chakra, but only two at the 3rd eye, which is the name of this series, the Wisdom Eye, or Jnana Chakshu. So you can see how everything all of a sudden, all the highways leading inward, expanding as they go to each chakra. This would be kind of my own interpretation. Like greater city coming up, there's more routes into it, greater city. But then higher cities in higher elevations where people can't breathe so well, so less and less chakras till finally, letters and petals, finally you get to the Agya Chakra and nobody wants to go there or can go there, because that's the end of manifestation and creation and worlds and time and space. Anyone who opens up this chakra goes into deep sleep. One way of saying, or we already just said that, it goes into the unmanifested. And what's the poison there? Identifying with seeds. Knowing seeds is one thing, but becoming a prakriti laya, That is, oh, I see the seeds, what can I do with these? See, as compared to, I see the seeds, I don't want to germinate them anymore. Let's burn them over, like Patty, well, Sri Ramakrishna said, over a fire so they won't germinate anymore. That's what the soul leading to the heading for the Sahasrara chakra inside is thinking. Whereas one who wants to manipulate, well, there's another reason why there are poisons, you see, at these higher chakras. I want to go to the realm of the austere beings, one god said one day. See? And so he went to Lord Brahma, can I get into Maharloka, where the austere beings are? And Lord Brahma looked at him and said, well, I still see you have a desire to dominate and rule over the gods. So no, you can't go there. Go fulfill your desire to rule over the gods. Take on, be the next cycle's Indra, and get rid of that desire to rule over the gods. Then you can go where the seers of austerity have gone, because they've transcended the need to or will to rule over beings. They're just standing as examples for what to attain. So that's just a story I made up at the break when these questions came up about poisons at high chakras. It's something, again, to be contemplated about that's very revealing. And it's revealing of different natures of souls, even very high souls like Prakriti Layas. See, Laya means to dissolve, to destroy, actually. And Prakriti means all this unmanifested material inside the great mind. Do you want a soul like that? Does Lord Brahma want a soul like that to get hold of everything in unmanifested Prakriti and do what he wants with it? You bet he doesn't. So that kind of soul is kept from higher chakras by its own desire for manifesting Prakriti. Doesn't sound a lot different than people here on earth, but they just don't have the knowledge in them of higher worlds. But that Prakriti Laya has found it out, but it's using it in the wrong ways. That's a poison in them. So that's another way in which we can answer that question, which has been current in the last two classes. We see how these poisons and nectars work with one another. So I was about to say that when you get to the Agya Chakra, all these 16 passageways or nadis that were leading to the throat chakra, in which a lot of great luminaries were discoursing and writing scriptures and coming to full knowledge of everything, which they will use in a highly conscious way, unlike the Prakriti Laya. All of a sudden they say, well, there's a higher center I want to go to. It's called the Agya. I want to open my third eye. And all those two passageways only. One in, one out. You could put this in context, and I have before, of souls coming into manifestation at a very high level of consciousness, because we're to think that down here in the Manipura, you see, with its 10 letters and 10 sounds and 10 pranashaktis, that there are thousands and thousands of nadis going into that center, and souls are moving into them to be reborn in bodies. And when they die from earth, they're moving into them, and when they die at the level of heaven, that is, they use up their good merit, they're going back to earth. So they're running a boat race up and down the wheel of samsara in 3 chakra form. So in somewhat the similar way then, these beings who are trying to get higher qualification, higher attainment, to reach the third eye and to go in and out of it consciously is a very rare thing. Those paths are very, very lightly populated. It's going to take some subtle grace to be able to open that third eye and keep it open. There are people who have experiences of it, and but to keep it open, it's almost as easy just to fall to the throat and talk about it. See? And then every once in a while, because you've talked about it, have the experience of it, and then come back down and talk about it some more. So there's a purpose to that. And even to returning to the heart, because Sri Ramakrishna said he went in and out of these higher chakras he said it just wouldn't go down to the 3 lower chakras. I can stand at the heart chakra and call beings to me, but I cannot go there, where eating, drinking, and sex life is the preoccupation. So I was called to look at these, instead of relying on that beautiful poem we heard, to actually look at these. And in fact, since we're ending this chart, we might want to take an excerpt from another of Lexixen's poem, much shorter this time, to explain a little bit more and conclude this beautiful chart on the Sat chakras. Sat means truth. The Supreme Lady stands magnificently on the breast of transcendent reality, who is her mystic consort, supine, dead to relativity. Blood streams of countless beings adorn her black form, as streaks of lightning pervade a dark thundercloud. How utterly inconceivable is she! The very touch of her dancing feet has plunged Shiva, the cosmic dancer, into bright, still, formless ecstasy. She is the free play of love, unveiling universal manifestation. Shiva is her own hiddenness, her secret nature as absolutely unmanifest. Her 2 eyes stream with power and compassion, rising sun and full moon that float in one black sky. Her brow bears a 3rd eye of wisdom, like the crescent moon, perceiving past and future as timeless transparency. Her form rises spontaneously, a single moon more vast than the cosmic sea. Her feet are mountains of ordinary moons. Rich fragrance streams from her beautiful darkness. She moves with the elephant's earth-shaking grace. This ecstatic lover, whom some have called the mad poet of the Mother, now cries out to all humanity, O lovers of truth, sisters and brothers, please meditate on Goddess Kali's beauty endlessly, by night and by day, singing simply Kali, Kali, Kali. These great songs and poems from the tradition, you might say, you could be tempted to say from the Bhakti Yoga side of things, breathe much more expansiveness and hands-on kind of aspiration and into the system like this, which is complex and probably the most mystical of all systems of India. So they might need some extra clarity, like a full moon vaster than the cosmic ocean. That's a pretty big moon. And her feet were piles of ordinary moons, put very brilliantly by our founder Lexixen. So in the time remaining, and with that inspiration to compel us on, let's look at one last chart. I actually had 2 more to show you, one of them very poetic, but I think maybe for the poetic side of things we can rely upon those 2 beautiful poems from Mother of the Universe, Tantric Hymns of Enlightenment, by our founder Lexixen. This chart, rather, is all the sayings of Sri Ramakrishna gathered out of the Gospel that pertain to his description of the 7 chakras, which he has likened here to a bonsai flute with 7 holes. And so he would often say, you don't want to just hold one note forever, and especially the highest note, because it's very hard to hold that for very long if you know your flute playing. So basically, to play music, you want to open up all these chakras and become aware of all the poisons and all the nectars there, become aware of the pranashaktis, open the nadis leading to the chakras, dispel the granthis or blocks in them, and sail inwardly with Mother Kali to the highest state of awareness, in as many attempts as it would take you to penetrate the Rudra Granthi that is a knot that lies between the third eye and the crown chakra. Only great souls have ventured there, been able to pierce beyond Maya. Sri Ramakrishna was one of those. And he says here at the top of this chart, holding the highest note on the flute is very difficult, but one can come down and play with the other 6 notes of the instrument and play beautiful music. And so a great soul like that, so adept, could play with anything. He could even play with poisons. There's one thing Sri Ramakrishna said once. He said, an expert dancer never takes a wrong step. So of course he does. He'll make some wrong step, but nobody will know it, because immediately as he's making it, he already knows he's making it and transforms it into some beautiful new step. See? And I know that to a certain extent about musicians too. Playing along and all of a sudden something unplanned happens, you see, in your riff or in your scale or in your raga or in your concerto, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you turn it into something very beautiful and nobody ever knows, maybe except another musician who knows that piece of music. So, but you worked it out, you see, in a most masterful way. So this is how Sri Ramakrishna is explaining playing all 7 chakras and knowing all of the elements in the Kundalini Yoga system and being well armed and secured and safe with those teachings. So enough said, just to say that that's an analogy here that is very apropos to the 7 chakras. Now, there are also 7 lower worlds, and we looked at that in, I think, the 2nd class that we took some 3 or 4 weeks ago. They're called patalas. So there you see the names of them: Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala. Patala means sunken ground. And so here's a quote from the Gospel. Known as the hells, as the hell realms, the 7 patalas correspond generally to the subconscious mind of humanity, wherein all manner of irrational instincts, habits, impressions, and memories are stored. These rise to influence the thoughts and actions of ignorant embodied beings without their being aware of the source of them. It's a really beautiful description of hell, and fleshed out completely in a way that we've never heard it if we were raised, say, in Christianity of the day and so forth, thinking about hellfires and eternal hellfires and devils with pitchforks and tails and things like that. Here you have coming from the standpoint that both heaven and hell have come from the human mind. God did not create them. Kundalini Shakti presides over them and flows through them in order to get you up and out of them. So you can't blame God or Shakti, Brahman or Shakti, for any of this. The human mind is at work. And when it's at work at its lowest level, it's got 7 lower chakras to visit, sunken grounds. Now here you're talking about poisons in a very real sense. Not poisons that you can kind of have to think about at levels of higher consciousness, because no doubt there's poisons at the 3rd chakra where the ancestors are. No doubt there's poisons at the 2nd chakra where the elementals are and lower beings, and no doubt there's plenty of poisons here on earth. Not only poisons in your food and poisons in the air, but poison in the thinking mind of humanity on earth. And you can be poisoned by them. That's why, if you want to go back to the first half, what did we say in the Jain tradition? Do not frequent unwholesome places. Do not frequent those. That's the poison. You have a choice whether or not you want to imbibe it or not. You can just as easily reject it and stay safe on earth, as far as that's possible. So I usually don't like to teach about the patalas, and there's not a lot of information on them. But when you put it in the hands of a great Kundalini master like this and get a description, there you have it in all its clarity. It's the subconscious mind of humanity, wherein all manner of irrational instincts, habits, impressions, and memories are stored. In other words, all the karma, the negative karma done by beings on earth, is stored up there. And that's what going to hell means in our tradition. You can be in hell right here on earth. A lot of people suffering from the virus right now are in a kind of hell. I've heard from them. Oh, I can't control my mind. I'm so fearful. I can't go out of the house. What am I to do? I'm worried about my children. Is the world ever going to get over this? That's being in hell. And you can't dig down in the earth and find a hell. You can't look up in the skies and see a heaven. These are chakras inside of you. They're places inside the mind. And billions of people are flowing in and out of them all the time. Not only when they die and get reborn, but when they dream. So why shouldn't you open nadis to higher places? Or put in another way, why should you sanction or accept nadis that only lead to undesirable places and undesirable effects and results and bad karmas and so forth? Why should you do that in your society? So I paused there because there's not a lot of information given about the patalas, and you hear them, you kind of want to slough over them. Oh, let's get on. There's enough to consider here on earth that's poisonous. I don't want to know about hells. But you can see that you really can't separate the patalas from earth. It's all stored up. Just like everything else. The Prakriti Laya knows that, for instance. All stored up. See, I can use that. But the yogi, the aspiring yogi and yogini says, I can really use that for the higher good of all beings and for my own highest good as well. I think I should probably save myself first and then go back and save others. All right, so maybe enough said there. About detecting such subtle spiritual lotuses, the author of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna was Mahendranath Gupta, affectionately known as M amongst the devotees of Sri Ramakrishna. He was a little older than Vivekananda and Brahmananda and other boys that were behind him, a decade or so or more. So he was older and more staid, and he taught English in a school in Calcutta there in Bengal, knew of Sri Ramakrishna and was very quiet and respectful. So when he went to the master, he got a lot of teachings from a sort of detached witness consciousness, and he also wrote down a lot of what the master said. So this greatest of all manuscripts, I think, that matches the Gita, like the two bookends of India are like kind of Gita and Gospel, I think, has come to us in this day and age with all the information we need, say, about even Kundalini Yoga, what to speak of Patanjali's yoga, what to speak of Vasishta's yoga, what to speak of Krishna's yogas, what to speak of the four yogas, the four main yogas that are listed both in the Gita and by Swami Vivekananda, who called them the new religion of this age. All those yogas. So he says here, this Mahendranath Gupta, with a magnifying glass one can make tiny objects look very big. Likewise, through the practice of yoga, one can detect the subtle spiritual lotuses. So there's a good connection of the physical, or Maharloka, to the Maharloka. That is the first chakra to the second chakra. Because remember, you can put the 7 worlds side by side. Oh, guess what? I did that. Forgot. There they are, right next to the lotuses, the 7 names of the 7 worlds. Might as well, since we came to that, explain that first. The first chakra, which is the first of the 7, which is then beyond these 7 lotus, 7 patalas, I mean, is called the Muladhara. And there is corresponding to the Maharloka. Then Svadhisthana, corresponding to the Bhavarloka, and then Manipura corresponding to the Svarloka. So the seven lotuses of Kundalini system are corresponding to the seven ancient worlds, or lokas, right straight across the board, you could say. Above that black line, you see, representing some granthi probably, that beings have a hard time passing through, is the fourth chakra, heart. And then you would correspond that to the Maharloka, the great loka. Then the pure Vishuddha chakra at the throat gets corresponded to the Jnana Loka. And then, of course, the third eye, the name of our series here, the Agya Chakra, corresponding to Tapar Loka. That's, of course, the yoga of austerities, of beings who are completely free or from any need or want, from anything, and live in their own Atman. Then the Sahasrara center next, that seventh hole, the flute, you'll see Brahmaloka there. If one reaches Brahmaloka, then they're very soon to get beyond all worlds and merge in the thousand-petaled lotus. So a general assignment there side by side, so that in your studies of the scriptures you'll come across what's called the three worlds. Sometimes you'll come across what's called the seven levels of existence, and then sometimes you'll come upon the seven lotuses, so that you know that these were all systems in India that were correlating with one another and explaining to different people at different times in different yugas these various worlds that were constantly there in the mind's eye of the Trinity, and basically efflorescing out, down and out, you might say, right on down to the Earthloka, maybe even the confused version of the Burloka. That's called the hells, the patalas. Very confused version of it. Sri Ramakrishna makes this all so beautiful. Let's see what he says, because it's going to, even though there's a lot of text here, this one quote can explain pretty much his description, in short, of the first three worlds, first three chakras. He says, yoga is not possible if the mind dwells on the three lower planes of existence only, the Manipura, Svadhisthana, and Muladhara. A worldly man's mind moves along among these three centers at the navel, the sexual organ, and the organ of evacuation. These three represent eating, drinking, and sex life. But when Kundalini Shakti is awakened, it passes through these three centers and pierces the heart chakra. Then a man hears the subtle sound and sees light, and he cries out in mute wonder, "Oh, what is this? What is this?" Part of that quote was on an earlier chart that we took today, but this is the fleshed out version of it, pretty much encapsulating everything essential that you need to know about the three lower chakras. Do you want to stay there? Eating, drinking, and sex life? Many, many billions of people do. And how many amongst those 7-8 billion in the world today, in the Kali Yuga, are thinking about escaping embodiment? How many are thinking that their karmas are keeping them down? How many are thinking about seeing God face to face? How many are thinking about dissolving everything into two nadis and reaching the third eye, where form disappears? How many have this kind of Buddha-like desire for nirvana or freedom? We must also cite the many, many sincere aspirants that are attempting to raise their consciousness through time. We've already finished almost half the chart. As I said, it's an easy study as the time begins to pass by, apparently so. Let's look at his description of the Maharloka. The center at the heart corresponds to the fourth plane of the Vedas. Okay, so that's Maharloka, right? That's why he's mentioning the seven world system. In this center is a lotus called Anahata with 12 petals. So we can refer to that and see that that follows the tradition. And we know what element it corresponds with, what deity is there, where it's allocated in our inner heart, and what its name is, and what prana shaktis are working there, so that we have some sort of grasp on the system, and when we sit down to contemplate, these things are at our beck and call. You're your own worst enemy if you don't do this, you see. You can't complain or blame God or blame anyone, God or the gods or the devils or the demons or the asuras, if you don't sit down and contemplate a system like this. That's what the father of Samkhya said. You reach the 8 great accomplishments by taking one system and contemplating it in its depths. And then some beings have actually connected, you see, connected them together, like Mahendranath Gupta and Sri Ramakrishna's relationship. Oh, how does this relate to the 7 worlds of the Vedas? Oh, well, the Manipura chakra is straight across the board from this Bhavarloka. And here I have some information for you about it. At the 5th realm, Jnana Loka, correlates with the Vishuddha chakra, and Sri Ramakrishna says, the 5th plane is at the throat. It has 16 petals. When Kundalini reaches it, one wants to talk and hear only about God. Talk of worldly subjects causes him pain. And he was himself as an example of that when he was in his 30s, doing his spiritual practices, and his devotees hadn't come to him yet. He very much wanted to share what he was finding out about the inner worlds with others. And so one night he climbed up on the roof of the Kali temple and cried out into the night, "Mother, where are my devotees? Please send them. Please send friends, my companions, my spiritual brothers or sisters. Please send them." And they began to show up, Vivekananda and Brahmananda, or Rakal and Naren and so forth, and other of the 16 that were to become his direct disciples. And so he said at that time, whenever I went and spent time in undesirable places where the world had gathered and hear them talk, it would actually hurt my ears. So he's reiterating that here around the Vishuddha chakra. Let's look at Taparloka. The 6th plane of consciousness corresponds to the Agya Chakra at the eyebrows. It has a lotus of 2 petals. There one sees the form of God. But there is still a barrier. It is like a light in a lantern. You cannot touch it due to the glass. So that might be a kind of poison, that you can't merge in what you see. You want so desperately at that time to turn 2 into 1, because the third eye means that, if nothing else. So there you are in that predicament. So great seers at the Taparloka are trying to penetrate through, or they're keeping causal bodies there to help people in lower centers. There's a lot of potential here for moving inward, involving, or evolving back towards grosser forms, taking on grosser forms to help others. So we don't want to discount that. It's a kind of unfigured quotient in the whole formula. And it's like Krishna is saying in the Gita, they do not see me when I come and go and take on forms. They do not see the Lord. Like you don't see bees going from flower to flower and produce, you only see the honey later. So he's passing through these various forms, and some of them he's got a very specific use for. Why? Because they know him and they love him. Knowing and loving him puts them beyond the limitation of the 3rd chakra. That's the criterion for getting out of the loop of samsara, is to love God with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole mind, and if you can do it, your neighbor is yourself. The 7th chakra has some good text here. That's the Brahma, corresponds with the Brahmaloka. And it says here, when Kundalini rises to the Sahasrara and the mind goes into samadhi, the aspirant loses all consciousness of the outer world. In that state, the life force lingers for 21 days and then passes out. But in the case of the incarnations and Ishvara Kotis, they can descend from this exalted state. They like to live with the devotees, enjoy the love of God, and retain a trace of ego so that they can teach men. Their minds move between the 6th and 7th planes. They run a boat race, as it were, between these two subtle centers. This is a very, as he said earlier, very deep and private experience, personal experience between you and Mother. Oh Mother, oh mind, come inside. Let's go to the realm of the Mother and commune with her. Beautiful songs in India that come up in that regard, including songs to a great master like this. Parama Guru Siddha Yogi, Parama Guru Siddha Yogi, Matri Bhakta Yugavatar, Paramahamsa Sri Rama Krishna, Paramahamsa Sri Rama Krishna, Laho Pranam Avatar. Laho Pranam Namaskar. I said avatar. I put a word in there. But we salute thee, the avatar, we salute thee. So these songs were written by devotees who were alive or just after he passed, by the dozens. I've learned so many of them myself. I've got a book full of them. And they're all well-deserved by this great soul, if you could even say that much. And so you can see that, a short course in Kundalini Yoga has been 5 weeks long we've taken. Each class has opened up a different level or element to it, and all probably centered around the 7 chakras, and focused on opening up this inner eye of wisdom. If you can do that, everything is right with the other worlds, and you have open access to the formless, what we call Advaita Vedanta, that Nirvikalpa that Swami Vivekananda and Holy Mother both experienced in their lives, and the nirvana that Buddha had under the Bo tree, and the Satori that Zen talks about, and the Asampragyata or seedless samadhi. That is there in the yoga tradition, Patanjala. So we still have enough minutes maybe for a quick mention of the rest of this chart. I hate to go through it so quickly, but it's better than not going through it at all, because there you see at the bottom, there at Krishna's feet, you see the Kundalini Shakti traversing the 7 chakras. So this is a way of saying it not just through words, like 7 worlds, and not just through the 7 chakras themselves, but through experiences that the seers have, or may have, as we course along. So this means basically some of these great Sanskrit sayings that have to do with what I was just speaking of, divine spiritual experiences. So you might say, using a combination of these, because this is myself drawing from different darshanas and different traditions of the world, in order to let us know that beings are having these very refined experiences as they awaken Mother Kundalini, if you want to put it in the Kundalini speak. So first of all, you might say Savitarka Samadhi, that you're having samadhi of objects, basically. And then Nirvitarka Samadhi, how the objects connect with the thoughts and so forth. So you're having you're having a much more conscious experience of your life on the physical world. So that's a nice thing to have. You get rid of mundane human convention, depression goes away, you're interested in everything, you're a much more conscious worker, you do seva for others, and this is because Divine Mother, in this case, has shown herself up to be associated with everything in your life, whereas opposite is the case with people who are still spiritually blind. She's not there. She doesn't show herself. Like Holy Mother saying, some people walk into the shrine room or into the temple and to go up to the deity, and the deity runs away from them. It's just still an image sitting there, but it has no consciousness in it that a devotee would come in and fall crying on the ground in front of, or Sri Ramakrishna would see as a living entity made of Chinmay, not Mrinmay, but Chinmay, made of consciousness, not made of just earth. So in that way, these two lower samadhis of yoga, Savitarka and Nirvitarka, are there. Then Savichara and Nirvichara can be taken together. These are the seated samadhis of yoga that you could find out from me if you want to take the yoga email class that I'm sending out to people. Good that you can receive that without having to leave your door or walk out your door in this time. When you're cloistered inside, you can take these email classes, and there are dozens of people doing that. I'm sending them out every week to people. So you can find out about the beauty of the Patanjali Yoga system. So Savichara and Nirvichara has more to do with the presence of your thoughts and the absence of your thoughts around objects. It should show you that objects come from thought, that matter is just mind made manifest. It's a nice little mantra you could. Matter is just mind made manifest. So just think of the letter M, and you can remember that saying, because that's what Holy Mother told us. Then you have Unmana Samadhi. It's kind of what it seems to be in Sanskrit. You see, you're just unminded. You're driven out of your mind, and that's a good thing in the case of the Samadhi, because your mind has been drawn towards experiencing poisons and maybe even storing up negative things for yourself, you see. If you engage in brooding, you're enforcing negativities in hell. You can think of it that way, and they'll come back on you and bite you in the posterior. So that's one way of convincing beings to give up the lower mind and get Unmana Samadhi. And then there's Sananda Samadhi. We recognize that from Patanjali's yoga too. That's with bliss. So you're beginning to have not just true happiness or contentment with objects, you're beginning to have bliss with them. Beginning to see them as manifestations of Brahman, courting that idea or that truism, all is Brahman. And there's some subtle things to navigate there still, so that you don't transgress laws about Advaita Vedanta, but nevertheless, that opens the door. There's Bhava Samadhi, see, like Bhava Mukha, you stay on the level of seeing both the world and God simultaneously. So what to speak of running boat races, you're actually walking a balk between two fields, and you can see both sides. That's how Sri Ramakrishna described. You know what I mean by a balk. It's not like, oops, stop. It means an aisle made of earth that's running through a rice field, so that you don't have to walk through the rice field. You can mount the balk and just walk across the whole field. But as you do, you can see both sides and what's happening there, which you couldn't have done if you didn't have that balk. So he said, Mother kept me in Bhava Mukha so that I could see both God and what was happening in the worlds. And Mother Kali kept him in that condition. There's Sasmita Samadhi. I've tried to put this in some sort of ascending order, but here's where the ego that was such a problem to you becomes your great friend, because it's been ripened. You're looking like more your true self now. See? Now I recognize me. That's the me I always thought I was. See? Well, there's still a little bit of barrier between, sort of like this barrier that was described here, right? Between the Agya Chakra and so forth. There's still essential I-ness there. Chaitanya Samadhi is unique Samadhi because you remember everything that you saw inwardly, they say, when you come back from it. Because most Samadhis that people have, as they ascend the chakras or the worlds, or have deep meditations, they come out of that without much memory of what happened to them. Certain things, they say, that was a beautiful experience, and they can assess and confirm that much. But it'd be sort of like you know, going into dream, having beautiful dreams, coming back out and not remembering very much of them. And half a day later, you can't remember any of them. You just get a kind of flavor of the dream, right? Well, I had a kind of vision there, and I have a kind of image in my mind of some person who I saw there, but it's fast fading, you see. But Chaitanya Samadhi, if you had that ability, you'd have a full recall. This is what I understand about what they say about Chaitanya Samadhi in the tradition. Well, the rest of these, since we've run out of time, you've got a seated Samadhi, Sampragyata. And Savikalpa Samadhi is the equivalent to that yogic Samadhi in Vedanta. Then you have Sthiti, or Sthita Samadhi. Where was I just writing about that? Well, I was talking a lot about it in our Saturday satsang, actually. About it's a preferred samadhi of many luminaries because it doesn't have peaks and valleys. Not that their valleys are very low at this point, but they have this even state of mind that they just love to stay in. They've already gained so much. And there's, worry, fear, and all those things, and passions and fetters. Those are back there in the hells. And they've long transcended those patalas. They still have maybe an eye on them to help others. But the real teaching there is that they just love this even state of mind, Sthita Samadhi. Jada Samadhi, just Sri Ramakrishna had it and he described it. And it's just going into that space of emptiness, and which is really fullness to the soul with its third eye open. And Zen would call that kind of experience Satori. Advaita Vedanta would call it Turiya, and Vedanta would call it, Buddhism would call it Nirvana. And then you have the unseated samadhis of Sampragyata and Nirvikalpa, finishing up these special states of higher awareness. And by that time, of course, you would have transcended the third eye that we're talking about over the last 5 weeks, and can hopefully, if you have the facility, regain the mind back from it and move back down to the chakras, the worlds of subtle bliss and so forth, and find yourself perfectly at ease with the dynamic and blissful movements of the Kundalini Shakti, Divine Mother. So here, let's end this 5-class series with a Sanskrit chant. Om Tachnayo, Om Tachnayo Ravrinni Mahe, Gatung Yagyaya, Gatung Ye Nupataye, Daivi Swastarastu Naha, Swastir Manusebhyaha, Urdhvam Jagatu Bhesajam, Sangno Astu Dvipade Sangchatushpate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Come, let us go inside and make a sincere and humble offering to the Lord and Mother. May we always delight in this offering. May we always revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifices. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace be unto the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity also abide among us. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.
Kula Kundalini Goma Banda Kahe, Redi Grandi Vidarana Kara Kahe, Mama Manasha Chanchala Ratra Dine, Guru Devadaya Karadina Jane. Jaya Sadguru Ishvara Prabha Kahe, Bhavaroga Vikara Vina Shaka He, Mana Jena Rahitava Shri Charane, Guru Devadaya Karadina Jane. Guru Devadaya Karadina Jane.